in ways both stunning and subtle, awesome and awful. Change is fast becoming the defining characteristic of our time. Nothing and no one is immune. Change, even change itself, is changing. Faster, more interconnected, and unrelenting, the change we face is a reality-shattering change pandemic that continually alters the recipe for personal and professional success. The problem is that change isn't the problem. The problem is how change affects people that experience too much of it too quickly. What Alvin Toffler called future shock. The shattering stress and disorientation that we induce in individuals by subjecting them to too much change in too short of time. Consider the slap heard around the world when Will Smith broke all convention, shattered all expectations and precedents. Will Smith's Academy Award assault of Chris Rock set in motion a debate that touches on right and wrong from every possible angle. I'll leave it to the pundits and the publicists because that night I saw something different. You see, I was looking behind and around Smith, looking at the stunned audience, and I realized that I'd seen a group of people collectively experience future shock. Together, they experienced something totally unexpected and entirely unprecedented in an environment populated by people that inhabit a Hollywood reality that above all else believes the show must go on. Once again, I can't add much to what's already been said about Smith's actions. I have a zero-tolerance policy for violence and unfunny jokes, but I suggest that the audience's slow response may have had less to do with being a pampered, self-indulgent Hollywood culture and more to do with the speed at which expectations change and the degree expectations differ amongst people and groups. While the others watched the slap heard round the world, I saw Alvin Toffler's future shock, an entire audience, both in the studio and watching at home. Stay with us and learn how to protect yourself and your family from future shock. From the edge of tomorrow, where a growing legion of people are learning how to harness the power of change to build a brighter future, we invite you to join us and be a part of it all. This is Willing to Win. If you're willing to think different, willing to work different, willing to change at the speed of now, then you're willing to win. This is Willing to Win. I'm Jeff Kaplan.
And I'm Tara Thomas-Gettman. And Alyssa Nolte is also joining us to dive into more about strategy. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. As we said, we are talking about not just the Oscars, but we need to bring that up because You're From the Edge was really actually insightful, and you weren't taking sides by any means.
No, it's not something that will serve anybody's purpose. And besides, if you want to take a side, there's plenty of people that are talking about the issue all over social media. Really, what we're talking about is the idea that was really expressed there, and that is that expectations are changing so quickly and our worldviews are changing so quickly, and sometimes we get so inside our own bubble and so inside ourselves that we miss that certain mores have changed. And I remember years ago, and I'm a big Saturday Night Live fan, as you know, there was a skit that used to be on with Al Franken, and it was Al Franken would talk to the audience, and he would talk about really one topic. No matter how long he talked or what he was talking about, it always went back to one thing: me, Al Franken. And it was so funny because it was completely out of date with a culture that was starting to come to grips with a worldview and the reality that lots of stuff's going on there, and the last thing you want to do is be totally self-centered or self-absorbed because you are not going to be supported by anybody. And so sort of reminded me of that kind of activity.
And let's take a look and a listen at an Al Franken clip back when SNL was actually funny.
Dennis, that introduction was written by me, Al Franken. It's been almost 6 years since I reported on the Al Franken decade, giving tips on what you can do for me, Al Franken. And a lot of well-meaning people come up to me and say, Al, is it still the Al Franken decade? Yes, it is. You see, after leaving the original Saturday Night, the one with all the incredibly talented people, people like me, Al Franken.
I loved that because what you said is true. Not only is it that he was self-absorbed, but what's funny is that wouldn't necessarily be socially acceptable.
No.
But in a lot of ways, we have now culturally allowed people to, as you talk about, create their own reality and then completely reject sometimes common sense or rational thought. I mean, we're almost allowing people to evolve into a place where they can just tunnel vision and sort of put up these, this bubble wrap around them and turn themselves out, almost check themselves out from the greater world that's going on around them. And that's something that we talk about a lot with Willing to Win. Part of our conversation about strategy is we don't want you to feel like you have to hole up in your bedroom with all of the things that are going on around us and all of the, good and bad information that comes your way every day. And so it's a story of strategy with a thread of optimism.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And it's really interesting too. I just want to comment on, the point you were making earlier, and that is that we have these like strange rules and exceptions to rules that until we start like doing this, which by the way, this is the work of Willing to Win. It's getting together with your families, it's getting around the kitchen table and talking about things that are changing and the unspoken rules that are popping up. Because it feels like there's an unspoken rule that you could still be Al Franken. It could be all about Al Franken. It's about me, Al Franken, provided you add to that you're so grateful for everything you have.
Exactly,
I'm so grateful.
Exactly, that's so true.
I just stepped and crushed my dog, but I'm just so grateful to be here. Oh, it's okay then. You can step and crush. I didn't hurt any animals in that joke. But it's those are the kind of things. It's those unspoken rules that are out there. We had rules like that before. They're just things that were just unacceptable. And I think you have an example of that.
Socialite. Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of examples out there, and we talk a lot about, your strategies and the way you're communicating and in leadership and how you execute those strategies. And we were sitting around the production table talking about, companies doing the right thing and moving forward, how that can move down a scale just to the manager of an individual store. So in 2001, there was a Hooters store, and the manager let all the waitresses know that they were going to have a beer selling competition. The waitress that sold the most beer.
That sounds like a hoot.
Sounds like a hoot. I'm sure it was. The waitress that sold the most beer.
He has a lot of other bad jokes.
I'm sure he does. He is a dad.
Dad humor.
Dad humor, yeah. That sold the most beer would win a Toyota. And of course, these waitresses are thinking, heck yes, I want that Toyota.
Yes.
I am going to go work my butt off to win that car. So they are all selling as much beer as they can, and one waitress wins the competition. She's ecstatic. She's thinking, I am going to have a life-changing moment. I am going to win a brand new car, right? I'm a Price is Right fan, in case you couldn't tell. So she's really excited. She wants this brand new car. So they blindfold her, and they bring her out to the parking lot. And here she's thinking, I'm going to win a brand new car. I'm going to have a life-changing day. They take off her blindfold, and sitting in the parking lot is a plastic-wrapped Yoda doll. A toy Yoda. I mean, imagine the level of disappointment. You have just worked your butt off, making a lot of money for the company, helping them sell beer, doing your job better than anyone else with the promise of a Toyota. Nobody said, to be fair, nobody said it was a car. They said it was a Toyota. But what's the reasonable expectation of when you hear Toyota? What are you thinking? You're thinking car. You're not thinking.
That's like you used to tell the kids, go and do something and I'll give you 1,000,000 doll hairs.
Exactly. Like, wait a minute. My uncle pulled that on me back when I was little.
I taught him that, yeah.
I'm going to go pull up for that. I'm going to need that money.
The way that we process the experience, right, is there can be a disconnect between the person in the company who came up with that strategy, who didn't think that the Hooters waitresses that were putting all this blood, sweat, and tears into the competition, how they would experience that was not, they weren't looking at it through the lens of empathy that you often talk about. And I just heard of a teacher doing something that is a hilarious example. To dupe the students, he said, do you want me to bring you some brownies? And so he cut out brown E's out of construction paper, and he was giving the students brown E's, literally.
Right, instead of brownies.
But he also made brownies and was going to actually not totally, let them down. So my follow-up is, do we know if that Hooters waitress ended up getting a Toyota?
So, yes, she did end up getting a Toyota, only after she had to sue the company for millions of dollars for emotional distress and the damages that were caused. Because in the end, there was, so this was my business law class where I heard this story, there was an implied contract for the Toyota. So that's why it was discussed in my business law class. And it ended up being a terrible PR situation for Hooters, and it ended up being a terrible emotional experience for this waitress, and I'm sure a terrible experience for the manager who had to answer to the top tier corporate executives as to why he had to do this. But you know, this doesn't happen anymore. I mean, how could it be?
I've actually seen the shirt of that. It says, you know, I sued my company for $1 million because I got a Toyota instead of a Toyota, and all I got was this shirt. So it's a really big shirt.
It only comes in the double extra large size.
See, Dad, humor hits.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so speaking of missing the mark on messaging, we have a recent example that a lot of people saw because it got a lot of attention for the wrong reasons. When you now have the ability to connect with, as Jeff said, your, you know, hundreds of people that before you would have had maybe that 1 year annual conference or annual meeting, it can go terribly wrong if your message is not giving people the experience that you hope results when you're delivering it. Talk about that CEO who screwed up royally.
Well, so we're all one cell phone video away from having, or one willing to win TV show away from a very embarrassing experience.
Exactly.
And, you know, this CEO made some very terrible choices, and he got on a Zoom call and brought 900 other people into this Zoom call, people who worked for him. He's the CEO of a company called Better.com, and they're a mortgage company.
So what is it?
Better.com.
I just want to be the audience here. So I'm called to this conference.
Yes.
I don't know what it's about. My boss is going to tell me something, and we work at a company called Better. Okay.
Better,
I'm
exactly.
There. I'm there.
You've set the stage perfectly. Better.com, and it's my boss's boss's boss. It's the CEO of the company, and I have no idea what he's here to tell me. Right before Christmas, maybe it's bonuses, right? Maybe it's something really exciting. Maybe it's good. Walks in the room, and the first thing he says is, if you are one of the unfortunate members to join this call, you're getting fired today. Could you imagine? And then proceeds to go on to talk about how painful it is for him to have to do this.
Al Franken.
For him, Al Franken, to have to do this right before Christmas, and how hard and hurtful it is for him that this is happening. And imagine you're one of those 900 people who's sitting here hearing this, that you're not going to be able to buy those presents for Christmas, or that your life is absolutely coming to, you know, an impactful, major, significant day that you weren't expecting. But you have to sit here and listen to this guy say how hard it is for him.
Well, one of the details that's often lost in that story is the fact that, you know, even though they were fired, they were each given a Toyota.
Toyota, you're right. Wearing a Better.com t-shirt.
Yeah.
We have another example that I found too in our research that I thought, as a former journalist, was really a misalignment. You know, talk about missing the mark and landing flat on your face. The Washington Post had a story that covering the fact that Tribune Publishing, which employs, you know, numerous journalists and does a lot with, you know, the print media, their IT department sent out what was supposed to be a test for cybersecurity effectiveness, and it was something along the lines of click here to get your $10,000 bonus. Well, there was no bonus. Well, at a time when that industry is facing so many layoffs and so much downsizing, that was the completely wrong experience that resulted out of something that was in the IT, you know, purview, maybe a way to really hit the mark that we're not being protective of our firewall. Well, no, because people were dying to get a bonus because they've had so many, you know, bad turns leading up to it.
Well, and here's the thing, in all of those situations, the inherent core of what they were trying to do was the right thing. They were trying to increase beer sales. They were, you know, trying to protect the company because, unfortunately, layoffs have to happen sometimes. It's just the way of business. You know, they were trying to be proactive with their security. It's the way they approached and communicated their strategies to do that became the problem.
But we do a lot of work in our organization with other IT organizations. And IT organizations in my entire career have always gotten a bad rap. They're just the AV club grown up. They can't communicate, right? And it's like, and none of that stuff has been true in my experience, right? The folks that are leading, technology departments around the country today in many of the organizations we work with are as fully developed leaders as they come, right? They're thinking about the entire organization. I'm just trying to imagine the meeting of the minds, the table where you sit around and somebody says, we're going to go ahead and offer $10,000 for somebody to do this. And if they do this, then we're going to get them. So not only are they going to not get the $10,000, we're going to get them in trouble. And everybody at that table going, that's a great idea. Green light that. I mean, I can't understand that.
Yeah, it's sad because sometimes, as we've all experienced, there is a lack of trying to, put yourself in the shoes of others. And so they've lost that sort of empathy chip in the way that they're executing strategy. So unfortunately, thanks to the internet, then we all get to uncover these foibles, and sometimes they land up in court and can be very costly.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for staying with Willing to Win. Our website is willingtowin.org, willing2win.org, where you can watch this show, listen to it, or check out our other episodes. We've had just a really fun season diving into strategy because we just have a lot of funny stories to share, right? Or interesting interpretations
or great
of said
dad
stories.
Jokes.
Yeah, exactly. So tell us, what are some things we can reflect on as we move forward when we think about strategy and the way it's communicated?
Well, we had a good time this week and a lot of great jokes, but now we have a question for you, and that question is when your boss is not wearing clothes, wait a second. When you are in a situation where the emperor has no clothes,
exactly,
where somebody has done something they absolutely shouldn't have done, and you have to be in that situation of a social faux pas. What do you do about that? How do you correct that? And then how do you make the point so that it's not replicated? Because these things aren't going away. And I just want to make sure we had a good time, but I want to make sure our audience realizes Alyssa handpicked those two examples, not because they were extreme examples of what's happening right now, but they're extreme examples that happen 2 decades apart. It doesn't feel like there's an epidemic of common sense that's out there. But that lack of common sense can be magnified through social media and other communication channels that can make it much worse and much more damaging. So in the one case, yes, there was somebody who was definitely hurt and a wrong was done to her in terms of the Toyota. But in the other case, I mean, it's unconscionable.
Absolutely. And we talked about in a previous episode a great quote that Jeff shared, that a leader is not responsible for what she says. She is responsible for what her followers hear. And let's use that as our takeaway as we reflect on strategy in the coming weeks and months. Thanks so much for watching Willing to Win. We will see you around the bend.
These episodes are the first reports filed from the front lines of change, where a growing legion of individuals and organizations are discovering what it takes to win and stay winning in a world defined by change and driven by interconnected human networks.
Willing to Win is produced by Lift Productions. Guests on the program are not compensated, nor is their appearance representative of the Willing to Win views. Willing to Win does not necessarily endorse any people, products, or services.